Good morning, Year 4. Welcome to Thursday. This is our final day of our Horned Helmet unit, where today we're going to finish reading The Horned Helmet. So let's just recap from yesterday. At the end of yesterday's lesson, I asked you to read or listen to the next chapter, and that was chapter 14 yesterday. So chapter 14 was called The New Guardian. So what did we find out? What happened at this part of the story? So we know it's got to the part of the story now where Bjorn can't bear to live with Starkad and Katla together. He knows that he feels that he doesn't belong there anymore. We know that he was quite rude to Katla and said he doesn't want to call her his mother. So he knows that the life for him is as a sea rover, as a Viking. So he is going to leave. So we know that chapter 14 was set where they were enjoying their kind of last meal together, their last supper, while Starkad has been training Bjorn over the last few weeks exactly how to fight like a true Viking. And we know that Bjorn is planning to leave Blanchland and head off as the Viking that he wanted to be. Okay. Just as they were enjoying their last meal, they were surprised and perhaps interrupted by a very deep voice outside the door, which said, "Open the gates, you within. Open them, or we shall break them down." So, I wonder who might be at the door to Katla's house where Starkad and Bjorn are inside. Who do you think would be that fierce and aggressive that perhaps could cause some bother? Yeah, some Vikings. I think you are right. I'm sure that's what you were thinking. So we know from the horns blaring, the fierce shouting, that Starkad and Bjorn have found themselves in danger. We know that Starkad is not the fighter that he used to be. He's weak. And we know that if it is Vikings at the door, they're going to be severely outnumbered. Okay, so I want you to just have a think, have a prediction now. What might happen to Bjorn? What might happen to Starkad? What might happen to Katla at the village of Blanchland? Have a think. Okay, so I want you to listen to chapter 15 now. Okay, chapter 15, which you'll click on the link in just a moment on YouTube, is called Up Holly R, and we know that's going to be a famous phrase that Starkad says. Okay, as you're reading chapter 15 or listening to Miss Eddleston read chapter 15, I want you to think about, is your prediction correct? What you predicted that might happen to Starkad and Bjorn and Katla, does that happen? Or does something surprise you, perhaps? I also want you to think about who has arrived at that door. Who was it? Okay, so pause the video now and enjoy chapter 15. Welcome back. I hope you enjoyed it. So was your prediction correct? Did you think it was some Vikings? Did you predict that perhaps Starkad, Bjorn and Katla weren't going to be in any danger after all? I know I certainly didn't. I predicted there was going to be a huge battle, so I could see I was terribly wrong. So I wonder if you can answer this question now. Who had come to the village? So hopefully while you were listening to chapter 15, you realised that yes, it was some Vikings that arrived. Bjorn and Starkad went out of the house, ready to fight, ready to attack. Bjorn was incredibly emotional because Starkad had asked him to be his guardian, okay? And he was prepared to be the guardian for Starkad. However, just as they were about to fight, and Starkad said his famous words, "Up Hollyar," they realised it was Jarl Skallagrim. So the crew from Reindeer had come to raid Blanchland, and they were ready to attack, ready to steal and raid Katla's house, when they realised it was Starkad and Bjorn. So no raiding took place, and luckily they were saved. So they enjoyed a feast together, and the crew on Reindeer have realised that Starkad has quite a good life now. okay, as a farmer with his happy house and his happy family, and they've realised that actually Starcad has made a really good choice by choosing to be a settler at the village of Blanchland. Okay, so no raid happened, and nobody else in the village needed to know that the Vikings had appeared that night. Okay, so the next thing I want you to do is to begin thinking about chapter 16. But before you listen to chapter 16 over on YouTube, I just need to explain that that is an epilogue. I wonder if you know what the word epilogue means. I've got a bit of an explanation here for you. So we can see from the dictionary, an epilogue is a section or a speech that usually comes at the end of a play or at the end of the story. So in this case, the story of the Horned Helmet, and it is the very last section, okay? But it kind of brings a conclusion to the story of what's happened. An epilogue is usually set quite a time later after the main part of the story. Okay, so you'll see that when you're listening to chapter 16. You'll see that this part of the story is quite a few years after what has happened. Okay, so we know that Bjorn is going to go as a Viking with Jarl Skallagrim and the crew on reindeer, and off he wants to lead his Viking life. Okay, so off he goes. So have a listen to chapter 16. Can you think about why it's called Golden Hair? Okay, I hope you enjoy. Come back to me when you're done. Okay, welcome back. Well, that was the end of the story. I really hope you enjoyed that. Hopefully, you will have realised that the man with the golden hair was Bjorn many years later, as a grown man, coming back to the village of Blanchland, having decided to give up his Viking sea rover ways. He comes with a bag full of treasure, but he's come back to the family that he knows he has, and he wants to become a farmer, just like Starcad. In fact, he talks about how he knows that farming is the real tough man's work, not like the sea rovers on the Vikings. Okay, he knows he's got a tough job ahead of him to be that farmer, as he's going to settle in Blanchland with his father Starcad and with his new mother Katla. So now that we've finished the story, the purpose of today's lesson, our final lesson of this unit, is that I'd really like to know your personal opinion of the story, okay? And I'd really like to know what you think about the whole of the story and of the Horned Helmet. So today I'm going to be asking you to create a bit of a review, okay? So usually when somebody writes a review of a story, they share their opinion, they talk about what they liked, they talk about perhaps what they didn't like, but also they think about how they would recommend it to somebody else or who might like to read it. Okay, so I've put some typical book review questions here that people who would be reviewing a book might include within a review. So things like, who do you think the author intended to read this book and why? If you could only save one character in the book from an event of a disaster, which one would it be and why? Do you think the title is a good one or a poor one for the story and why? Do you like the way the story ended? Why or why not? Which character in the book would you choose for a friend and why? What did you think was the most interesting part of the book and why? And explain, in your opinion, the most exciting part of the book, being sure to give at least 3 reasons why. Okay, so answering any of those questions would enable you to begin to give a bit of an opinion about what you thought of the story. Okay, so your task today is to choose a maximum of 3 of those points. Okay, so I don't want you to do them all, because I know if you do them all you won't give a lot of detail. Okay, it'll be quite short responses, so I only want you to choose 3 because I want some really detailed answers. Okay, quite a detailed paragraph for each of the points that you choose. Okay, and by choosing 3 of those points, you can choose any of them in any order, it doesn't matter which order you write them into. I really want you to think about the detail that you give in your answer, but also your personal opinion. Remember, there's no right or wrong here. It's being able for you to share for me and others exactly what you thought of the Horned Helmet, ready for next year's year 3, before they read it when they're in year 4. Okay, So choose your three. You will see on the Google Drive, there's a document here. Those are the exact points that we've just looked at together. Okay, choose your three. You can present it in any way you like. So try and be as creative as you can. You might write your question as your title and then produce your answer in quite a creative way. You could perhaps draw a picture to each of your answers. You don't have to present it as just a paragraph of writing. Could you present it in a different way, perhaps, to show a really creative book review? I know that you guys are really good at being creative, so I look forward to seeing those. Okay. Once you've completed your review of the 3 points that you've chosen, I then want you to do a kind of final review of this whole unit. Okay. Now I said to you right at the beginning of the story that we'd chosen the horned helmet as a story for you because not only is it quite a dramatic story, it's got some brilliant vocab in there as well, which has been a great focus for our writing throughout the unit. But the main reason that we chose the horned helmet as a story is because it gave us some really interesting and good knowledge about the Viking period. So we've been able to find out a lot more of our history knowledge from the horned helmet. So things like how the Vikings converted from pagan beliefs into Christianity. That became part of our knowledge from this story. How the different roles on a Viking longship and what life was like for a Viking on a longship. That was part of our knowledge from this story. So I want you to really think about what else have you learned from reading The Horned Helmet as a story. Okay, remember the characters were fictional. So Bjorn and Starkad, all of those characters aren't real life characters. But the events that happened were the things that Vikings would have done back in history. So I want you to think about what have you learned about the Vikings from this, okay? And then also, and probably more importantly, I'd like you to also jot down if you still have any questions. So is there anything you still don't know about the Viking period? And what would you still like to find out? Those questions might lead to further research, but I could also use those questions as we're planning your next lessons for after half term, okay? So again, you can present this in any way you like. You can draw this as a mind map if you want to. You can add your questions as a list of questions if you want to. Show it to me in any way you like, but I'd really like to know exactly what you've learned from this story, and also if you have any questions, anything you'd still like to find out. Okay, so 2 tasks for you to think about for the end of this session and for the end of this unit, thinking about your 3 points for your book review and how you're going to present that. And finally, thinking about what you've learned and what you'd still like to find out about the Vikings. Okay, I look forward to seeing both of those tasks today. I really hope you've enjoyed the horned helmet. I know that in school we've certainly enjoyed it. We've enjoyed some of the drama in the story, and I know perhaps being at home listening to it has perhaps been a little bit different. So I'm really looking forward to seeing your personal opinion of that story. Okay. Well done for today, guys. Look forward to seeing it. See you again soon. Bye bye.